Hello, welcome back to Tail 3 Cabins. Today I want to talk about your tractor storage, not just storing your tractor, but also all your implements too. And we're going to go through a little bit of history. Some folks are fine with leaving their tractor outside and just leaving it out open in the elements. Some folks might get a temporary shelter, like a little canopy made out of canvas or plastic, and store their tractor in there, thinking they're going to build something in the future. Some of you folks might have it. Some of you folks might have your tractor sit in the garage while your wife's car might sit outside, and I can tell you that's not going to happen here at home. And then some of you might have a small shed, and some of you might have a good-sized pole barn, and you already have the storage. But I just want to kind of cover the history of what I went through when I got my tractor and the storage problems that I had initially and how things progressed through the years to get to where we're at now, some of the mistakes that I made, some of the mistakes I made with building this pole barn, and share that information, give you a sense of scale when everything is all put in its place and how much room you have left with the dimensions that I give you. And the same thing when you first start out, if you have a smaller shed, just what you're going to be up against. So let's just get started. When I first got my tractor, it was back in October 2018. So I've had it, it's going to be almost 5 years old now, coming up in October. I stored it in my garden shed, and it was very tight in there. My garden shed is approximately 12 feet by 16 feet, 12 feet wide. The doorway was an 8-foot door with, I bet you the clearance is not more than 7 feet, maybe just under 7 feet, about 6 feet, 8 inches. So when I stored it in my shed, I used to have to suck the bucket in all the way into curl mode and then pull it as far forward as I could get. Many times I'm hitting the back wall of my shed. So I would also have to bring the backhoe in tight, angled at one side or the other, usually the far side, so I could close the door of my shed, and it was pretty tight. I also had two implements when I first got my tractor. I had a brush hog, which takes up a lot of room, and I had a box blade. The box blade I was able to store inside the shed. I stored it on two piano type dollies that you get at Harbor Freight on wheels, so I could move it about in there when I needed it. And a lot of times I'd have it in the back part of my shed, and then I'd be setting the bucket almost right on top of the box blade. So again, it was tight quarters. I always had to bring the ROPS down, which was kind of a pain. Bringing those down, I never forgot. I always remembered to bring them down. A couple of times I came close where I looked up and I'm a couple inches away from hitting my doorway. But I don't think the tractor has enough power that it would have tore out my doors. So that was a hindrance too, just having the ROPS. I did have it in the garage a couple times here and there, just when I was working on it, doing maintenance to it. Same thing, I'd have to fold the ROPS down. Now that I have the cab on it, there's no folding down the ROPS. It's pretty much going to stay that way, and I need a large overhead. So as a little bit of time goes by, you start thinking you want some other implements, and then there's storage for that. Initially, I was storing my brush hog under an overhang that I had on the shed next door here, and that worked out fine. It kept it out of the weather for the most part, unless it was snowing, then you get the snow that would blow underneath. And of course, the box blade was still inside. But then I started adding things like a snow plow, a tiller, the brush crusher, and then those started to take up much more room. And I did have to keep a couple implements outside temporarily until I figured out exactly how I was going to store it or reshuffle things around. I always want to keep things in a way that I can get to them easily and I don't have to move one thing out of the way to get to the other thing. And that was an issue with the tractor being inside my shed, is that if I ever wanted to get my lawnmower out or my pressure washer out or some other large gas operated appliance in there, I always had to pull the tractor out first, then take out my lawnmower. And it wasn't that bad. I didn't mind pulling it out. It's obviously you're not pushing it or anything, you're driving it out. And it was kind of nice to get the tractor out anyways, even when I wasn't using it that day, to just pull it out, put it in the driveway and just admire it. And after a little bit of time, that starts to get a little bit annoying. I ended up getting a post hole digger and decided it was time that we needed to make more room for these implements. So then we put an overhang on the other side of the shed. It was very simple. We just drilled 3 posts into the ground, and then we put some metal roofing on there. Didn't really have to flash it or anything into the side. We just put it underneath the overhang of the shed, and that worked great to keep the weather off of things. Then we started a little shelf system. So again, I could put things that I use with the loader up top high and put them on shelves, and then things that I'm going to lift with my 3-point hitch, and those are on the ground, and I could just back into there, hook them up to the 3-point hitch, and go. So if you do get a tractor and you're thinking about these things, maybe you already have a tractor and you're wondering what you're going to do in the future, A 12 by 16 structure will do you okay as long as you don't have too many things in there. And if your door is a little short, then you got to worry about the ROPS. If you could have a little bit door opening, then that's great. You don't have to worry about taking it down when you pull in and pull out. But that's probably the tightest and the smallest confining I would go. And then when you start thinking in the future, just how you want to store your implements and what other things you might want to store, again, my goal is always to not have to move something out of the way to get to something else. And I figured when we were going to build our pole barn that 24 feet by 32 feet would be fine to have my tractor. And even if we got a second tractor, I think you would have the room side to side to have them next to one another and not have to move anything out of the way. I'd be room if I wanted to bring my UTV down here and store my UTV. Or even if I had to temporarily put my truck in here, that takes up a little bit more room, but I can do the truck and the tractor at the same time. I keep everything else along the fringes. If you stick with me during these videos and you've watched them all, or you know my history, you know that I had a little bit of an issue with the zoning board trying to get this pole barn, and it took the better half of a year and a half of fighting with them and to finally getting this up and built. And then, of course, I had issues with my old garden shed after that. If you're wondering what happened to that, there's a bunch of videos about it, about the zoning board and about the complete saga of trying to get this pole barn up and almost losing our garden shed and what the solution was for that. You can go back and check those videos out. So I've had this pole barn not just quite 2 years yet, it's a little over a year and a half that I've had it with a pad. Last year we added a pad out front. But I've slowly been adding things and trying to make things more organized and manageable. And wanted to just give you a quick tour of what I got here, and then we'll get back to the size, the mistakes that I made, give you an idea of the scale with the tractor sitting in the pole barn, how much room you have available around it, how many implements I store in here, and what do I still do with my overflow implements that I just think take up too much space. So let's start off with a little tour. As you walk in, and then right to your right in the corner here, right now it's just kind of reserved. I have a bunch of bicycles sitting there. I had an e-bike that I reviewed, and that's just kind of like temporary storage for those. I might find a permanent way of hanging those up or getting a rack for them. But for now, this space is almost reserved once the bikes are gone. It's reserved for if we tear down the cabin in southern Ohio, which is looking more and more likely. There's a few more bugs we got to work out. But if we tear that down, I'm going to store a bunch of stuff from the cabin here in this corner, make it easily available to just drop it off. And then when the other place is built, we could pick it up and take it out of here. Now right here we put up a little cabinet area that we can put tools, and it's mouse proof. We could just store things, keep things out of the way so it's not terribly cluttered. I don't have all of my automotive tools in here, just some stuff that I need occasionally when I'm working on the tractor, or if I have another small engine type device in here. I have enough things to get me by, a socket set, some wrenches, screwdrivers, etc. If it's going to be a big job, then I can go into the garage and get my other tools. But for now, I'm just keeping all those inside the garage where it's a little bit more climate controlled in there, doesn't get as much moisture. If you keep going towards the back, I have more of the smaller tractor implements that I would be using, like straps, toe straps, little dollies. I have my BX expanded blade if I want to put that on the end of my backhoe. I got some chains, diesel fuel. Right now I still have my neighbor's tampered still because I still might have one more concrete job to take care of, and then I'm going to return this back to him. I got my cornhole boards that are John Deere specific. Then I come around to the back part of the shed. In the back part of the shed, I took up about 4 feet of space. So if the shed is 32 feet deep, I have about 28 feet of floor area, so 24 by 28. And in the back part, I still have my shelving system where I keep most of my implements here. So I have my forks on the ground. I have my box blade that I can get to. And then I have my brush crusher, which is on a shelf. If we go next to that, then we have my snow plow. I can get to that right off of the shelf. I got the tiller underneath. I could just back in and grab the tiller. Up above, I made that shelving system so I could put a bunch of wood up there, and you saw a little time lapse of that at the beginning of me kind of collecting all the wood I have from my garage and other areas and just consolidating that. If you come around to the last third of the back end of the shed, I've got that man cage that's up there. I did not move my shelf down like when I first built it, and I told you I kind of made a mistake. It should be a couple inches lower, and I can deal with it getting it off and on that shelf. Then I have my sprayer up there where I can store. Below I still have my backhoe, and the backhoe just fits fine back there. I've had the backhoe off for a little while now, but I'm getting ready to probably put it on pretty soon because I do have some projects where I'm going to need the backhoe. I made a little holder for the subsoiler, and that if I ever want to put a 3-point hitch on here, I can just back up to the subsoiler and pick it up. One thing about the John Deere 1025R is that it doesn't have enough lift to totally get this subsoiler off the ground. You're always kind of dragging this down here at the bottom. And then as I come around, just have a few things hanging on the wall. I got my creeper, oil pan over here. I just have a small toolkit that I got initially. It was on sale at True Value Hardware, where they had a deal where you bought this and then you got the socket set and some other things for free, and it was like $99, and I thought I needed something to just store some of my oil and stuff like that, and grease gun right off the bat. So I purchased this initially to hold some things. I had the window here, and then I have a few more small items that I use, some clamps, stuff for trailering. I got my 3/4 inch socket set, have some lighting, some LED lighting, both for the tractor and work lighting, just in case I need something in an obscure place. And then you probably saw one of the first things I did was put up this pegboard, and this has worked out pretty good. I like this little area. Just have a bunch of minor tools, nothing too in-depth. Some of my overspill tools that if I need something, I can temporarily do something in here. Of course, I still have all my main tools in the garage, but this area has worked out good. When I first set things up, it's the middle of winter right now, so I took my power station back in the house with the lithium iron phosphate batteries. They don't do well when it's really, really cold out. They're not supposed to charge when it's really, really cold out. So just to protect my power stations, I got those in the house for now, and I'm just running a little extension cord from my shed over here, and I'm probably going to do something a little bit more permanent this spring. I have a few changes coming up that I'll probably do a video in 1 or 2 weeks about a new product that's going to give me a boost when it comes to the power section of the pole barn and make it so I can use compressors, shop vac, higher wattage appliances. So check that out. It'll be coming out in a couple weeks. All in all, everything works out good in here. So I'll give you an overall look of the pole barn from different angles, just to give you a little bit of scale with the tractor in it, how much room is left on the sides. And I know you could take a tape measure and you could say, well, my tractor's 14 feet from end to end, blah, blah, blah. That should give me 8 feet back here and 6 feet up here. But I think it helps to see things in actual use and what you're actually looking at. And it's still good to measure all that stuff out, but just to have an overall encompassing view of it might help you in the future to decide what you want to build. Maybe you want to go a little bit bigger. Maybe you don't need to go that big. It's just up to everybody's individual use. A lot of folks may not have as many implements as I have, and some might have quite a few more. So I didn't feel the need to put all my implements in here. There's certain ones that are just going to take up too much space, like the brush hog. So all my overflow implements I'm storing out by the shed, and I'll kind of give you an idea how that is over there. And this is basically my overflow area for implements that are just way too big to put in there. That would take up a lot of my space in there, and I can still get them underneath this shed. I have the rake here. It's a 72-inch rake. I'm also thinking about maybe selling it and then moving to a smaller rake, and then one that is quick hitch compatible, because this is a pain to hook up if you don't have a quick hitch. And it's a little too big for the tractor, not weight-wise or anything, but when it comes to lift-wise, it would be nice to have the smaller version, because I think it would work out nicer with the 1025R. And then I got my rotary cutter here, which takes up a lot of room from front to back. This takes up 6 feet, and it's 4 feet wide, so that takes a lot of room up. I did not want to store it in the pole barn because it would just be a pain to put it somewhere and take up too much valuable space in there. So it works out nicely under here. I can keep it out of the weather, still just back into this area, lift it out, and do what I need to do. This is my post hole digger, and I'm debating whether or not to put it inside. I probably could put it back in the corner where the backhoe is right now, and I think I have room to store both underneath that shelf that I built. But for now, it serves its purpose out here. It's an item that I haven't gone to much. I didn't use it all last year. I may have plans for it coming in 2023, but for now, it's doing okay out here. And this also takes up a little bit of room, and it's something that you really want to be able to back into and get to. It's not something easily to move around, especially by yourself. Lastly, I put my carryall under here, and this also takes up a good bit of room too. So these are just implements that take up a lot of room that I feel that don't really need to be in the pole barn. And even though it's not weather tight underneath this overhang, if you got a blowing snow, these things are going to accumulate with snow. They're all pretty much weather safe. So this is treated wood. There's not much to it. The metal frame, it's all covered in paint right now. Nothing's rusting. Everything looks good. So it does well under here. It's easy to get to again, to just back into this, lift it up. And then I got a little bit of space left in the back over here, just behind it, where I can come in off to this side. And I think for now I have my agrifab leaf catcher, and that's usually kept in my daughter's house because she's got some big maple trees in her backyard. Normally stored out there. I brought it here to help out my neighbor across the street to pick up his leaves this year and dump them at the curb. But I'm probably going to be moving that out, and then my log splitter is on loan right now, and when I get that back, I think this will be a good spot to put the log splitter, tuck it under here, maybe put a little tarp over it, but again, it'll be easy to get to. So the goal is to be able to get to everything without having to move anything else out of the way, and I pretty much achieved that. If I end up getting any more implements though, I'm going to have to be figuring out some new storage space. Some mistakes that I made when I built this. I had to go to the zoning board and get a variance to have this built. And it wasn't because of size, it was because of where it was being built at on my particular piece of property. But when I was there, I probably should have added to the variance maybe a taller pole barn. It wasn't on the radar at the time. We got an RV last year. It's going to be a year come March. It's 10 feet 11 inches tall, and our doorway, our sliding door here, is 10 feet. So I cannot get the RV in here. If I would have went up another foot, and I would recommend if you're going to go to 11, you might as well just go to 12. And that way, if you have a larger boat or an RV or something like that, you're pretty much guaranteed that you're going to be able to get it in that doorway. I wouldn't think of keeping the RV in here year round because it would take up a lot of space, but it would fit. It would have fit through the door. If I would have raised it up, it would have fit through my 12-foot wide door. I could have tucked it over here on the side, at least have about 4 feet over here, and still have room for the tractor on that side. In that case, I would have to probably move some things out of the way or logistically put my implements that I'm going to need in the wintertime where I can get to them easily and not be in the way of where the RV is. If I had to make a mistake, it was the door height could have been taller. For me, this is 10 feet tall of height, and I can use the whole 10 feet. But again, the RV is 10 feet 11 inches from top to bottom. I did think about building a little overhang by my garage. I'm looking at the actual height and just how tall it would have to be and how far it would have to come out, and it might look a little hokey over there. So I'm still debating about it. Okay, so that is just an overview of how I'm storing my stuff, and just to give you some ideas, size comparison on just how much room things take up, just to give you an idea of scale, just how things are organized in here. So if you do plan on building something in the future, you can kind of see and go by, this is 24 by 32, see if you need bigger, see if you need a little bit smaller, if this is overkill, if it's not enough. And then same with the shed over there. If you're just starting out, it was a good way to go, but I outgrew it and then needed to get something a little bit bigger. So I hope you enjoy these videos. Click on that little bell when you want to know when new one's coming out. Subscribe and like, and keep an eye on us. Take care, everybody.